Schizoaffective disorder is one of the lesser known psychotic disorders on the schizophrenia spectrum, and I really do feel that it could use a lot more love. You see, schizoaffective is unique in that it is not only a psychotic disorder, it is also a mood disorder. It has a psychosis component, i.e. schizophrenia, but it also has a combined mood disorder like bipolar or major depressive disorder. Bipolar disorder type 1, type 2, major depression disorder, major depressive disorder. It's, I don't know, labels. Let's get down to what exactly it is. Schizoaffective disorder is comprised of episodes, either psychotic episodes or mood episodes. The mood episodes could be mania or could be depression, and they happen concurrent with psychotic episodes. So you would be having both at the same time. However, there is a distinction between this kind of psychotic experience and the psychotic experience within bipolar disorder with psychotic features, major depression with psychotic features, and that is that the mood episodes that happen in psychosis can happen outside of psychosis. And the psychosis that go with the mood episodes can happen outside of the mood episodes. With bipolar or major depression with psychotic features, you have the two happening together, but not independent. Like you could have the moods independent of the psychosis, but the psychosis always happens with the moods. You would not have psychosis without the mood episodes. Schizoaffective is diagnosed when a person has psychosis 2 or more weeks independent of the mood episodes, but they must have both. They must have either mania, depression, or both with the psychosis. So as you can see, this is a bit different than schizophrenia. This is kind of like schizophrenia plus it has a bonus disorder combined, and it can play out a bit differently. In fact, I would like today to focus on the component of schizoaffective that is often, I believe, overlooked, and that would be the mood episodes. Today we are going to talk about the other half of schizoaffective disorder, the mood episodes. Take my hand and come with me into this crystal scenery and wait till I retain the ticket. You would never have the time. I would love to change your mind. You were there and it was good in the beginning. Before we get started, I would just like to throw out a trigger warning to say that the subject of psychosis and major mood disorders in and of itself is a sensitive subject that may at times be difficult to talk about. So if at any point during today's video I say anything that may be triggering or upsetting to you, you are more than welcome to leave. In this video specifically, we will be talking about psychotic depression, which can be very dark and violent in nature, as well as self-harm. So if that is not your cup of tea, you are more than welcome to leave. Also, a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional, and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical, psychiatric, or otherwise. Who I am simply is a person living with serious mental illness who is here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along my journey of mental health recovery. Now, as I said before, when you're dealing with schizoaffective, you have moods, you have psychosis, you have them together, you have them apart. There are essentially 4, maybe even 5 different experiences I can think of that can happen with schizoaffective. For instance, when you're dealing with schizoaffective disorder, major depressive type, you can have 3 different experiences of depression alone, psychosis alone, and psychotic depression. And these are all very different experiences. You might think that they're more similar because you do have that overlap, but each individual experience is vastly different because I have had all 3, and I must say that the psychosis without any mood element is like pure raw psychosis, And the depression without a psychotic element is pretty practical, I guess. Like the things I'm depressed about make sense, but together psychotic depression makes no sense. It is very, very dark. It is very delusional, and it is much, much different than typical psychosis, typical depression. It is really insane how completely different that experience can be when you combine the two. And then, of course, adding on top of those three separate experiences you have schizoaffective disorder bipolar type, which adds in mania. And you now have mania, pure mania, and psychotic mania. And this is now the fifth element, I suppose. So this is another level that is sort of completely the opposite of what you've had with psychotic depression. Psychotic mania is really trippy, honestly. To me, it's a lot like some kind of a freaky mushroom or acid trip. It's like really loopy, at least from my experience. But don't even get me started on what happens when you have a mixed mood episode. I'm not really sure if I can describe a mixed episode within psychosis because I have a hard enough time identifying those outside of psychosis. It is a very conflicting feeling of just like these two battling emotions that are both really, really, really heightened. And in psychosis, there is an element when you're dealing with moods and psychotic symptoms where the symptoms of psychosis might be congruent with the mood or they might be incongruent with the mood. And that basically means that when the psychotic symptoms are congruent with, say, depression, the depression will be reflected in the symptoms, like a delusion of being homeless if in your depression you're really concerned about your finances. And the incongruence would be if the symptom of depression was not reflected in the symptoms from psychosis. Like you might have really grandiose delusions of being really powerful and almighty when you're actually rather insecure and feeling fragile about yourself. So that to me is kind of confusing. I can't even understand how to begin to identify the incongruent and congruent symptoms, let alone whether the mood state itself outside of that chaos is mixed or not. So that's basically the established functions of schizoaffective disorder. And what I find really interesting about schizoaffective disorder that I didn't understand for a long time is that while the diagnostic criteria includes having psychosis independent of the mood episodes, it doesn't anywhere say that the mood episodes can happen independent of psychosis. So for a really, really long time, I was very, very confused because I thought there was something wrong with me. I had stopped having psychotic symptoms altogether, but the moods didn't really go away. And I thought maybe that meant I wasn't actually schizoaffective. But I couldn't really identify with psychotic or bipolar with psychotic features either because I did have psychosis alone. So I don't know, maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe other people just already know this, but yeah, the moods can happen outside of psychosis. And that is actually the part of schizoaffective that I deal with the most today. I do still have mood episodes even while medicated. And that is something I really want to emphasize. A lot of people, when they take antipsychotics, still have psychotic symptoms. And people have pointed out to me that because I'm asymptomatic, I must have it so much easier. And the truth is that I'm only asymptomatic from psychosis. I'm not asymptomatic from the bipolar side of my schizoaffective. I actually have reoccurring psychotic episode or mood episodes, and that never stopped. That is something that even with medication will not go away. And I have episodes, not psychotic episodes, but I have episodes pretty much every year, like clockwork. And now we'll go into part 2, where I explain why it's a completely different day, completely different month, and I'm picking back up this video halfway through instead of finishing it all the way through in one go. So yeah, as I said, I do have reoccurring mood episodes, and despite the notion that schizoaffective must be so much worse because of the psychosis, like being the major component, the mood episodes do still suck. They do. And they are still hard to live with, and they do disrupt my life when they happen. And I was struggling through an episode while I was filming that last one, and the second half became entirely unhinged. And I wanted to initially keep that in the video to show exactly what I mean by mood episode and like how severe they can actually be. But ultimately, it was incomprehensible. It it escalated to the point where I was kind of just babbling and very heightened, very emphatic, and it did not get any point across, let alone the one I was trying to make, that these mood episodes can look a lot like this. I'm actually currently in a mood episode. Some of the things that are pretty, erratic, unconventional, they do make sense, but it's, okay, here we go. I don't think anything through in mania, and I am going through so many different thought processes all at once, and I'm acting on them. I'll be doing like a project over here, a project over there, and I'll be like picking up different things and putting them all down and just go, 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 go. The things I'm picking up and putting down are dangerous. They're really, really bad things that I shouldn't be doing. And the thing is that these racing thoughts that are happening so fast don't allow me the time to think through my actions. So I do really dumb shit, because in my mind, it's not only this super exaggerated thing that's not actually a big deal, but to me feels very, very grand. I'm grandiose. It's also the fact that I'm not stopping to think of the consequences, to think this through, to consider the outcomes. Mania and impulsivity. Oh, whoa, that is a recipe for a lot of dangerous stuff. So I've given myself some time to chill out and recover and restore my wits, and I'm feeling more stable, and time will tell when this will happen again, but it does disrupt things, at least for a few weeks. My mood episodes can last anywhere from a couple of weeks to maybe as long as a month, now that I am medicated, and they really are just breakthrough symptoms. They're not as severe as they used to be. For instance, I never have full-blown mania unless it's in psychosis anymore, and the only reason I'd be in psychosis is if I was off of my medication. So when medicated, my mania is hypomanic and my depression is not suicidal. It's just a fluctuation, really. It's something that I have to ride out. I don't have any control over how I feel or act in those states. So all I can really do is wait it out, wait for it to pass, and hope to God I don't embarrass myself too much, honestly. Yeah, the last one was a mixed episode, so I was both manic and depressed, and I think I'll start with touching on that because that's kind of the lesser known of the mood states that a person can have, and that to me can be the most dangerous. I'm gonna put a little trigger warning on this next segment. I will be speaking about self-harm, and if that is not your cup of tea, you can fast forward to the timestamp here where I will get past that segment. But for now, I'm going to touch on one of the more dangerous elements of mixed state episodes, which is self-harm. Mixed states for me are the most frustrating to deal with because the two extremes are battling each other, and so I will have like the manic energy of the racing thoughts and the pressured speech and the agitation that comes with just being like constantly revved up. But backing that is really low lows, and it kind of reflects in those, racing speech thought patterns. So I'm more prone to impulse, and that's the mania. But the impulses are purely depressed, and that would be where the self-harm comes in. So mixed state episodes for me are the ones where I'm most compelled to self-harm because I'm swinging back and forth between feeling like I'm at the end of my rope and wanting to jump out a window out of sheer energy. And that kind of tends to culminate in self-harm because A, it relieves some of that pressure of mania, that heightened emotion that builds and builds and builds. It kind of like calms that down. And B, it does also somewhat alleviate the depressive feelings that can build too. And I did struggle with self-harm in my mixed episode, which I think was when it really hit me that that specific state of both mania and depression can be a dangerous combination. I've had episodes like this in the past, but couldn't really identify it until a psychiatrist I'm now with had pointed out to me what was going on. And now that I can look back, I can see a lot of times in my life where my moods were really chaotic in two different directions, and it would lead to these impulsive behaviors. And also impulsive behaviors of like, going out and doing reckless things, hanging out with dangerous people, like putting myself in bad situations because I'm living life on the edge, and the edge is very, very dark. But when you separate the two and have just mood episodes alone, it's a little more pure. Like it's pure mania, pure depression, play out kind of differently, I guess. I've always leaned more towards hypomanic, and this is something that I speculate about and I want to throw out there. I want to throw out a little query. I don't really agree that the only bipolar type for schizoaffective is type 1. Because they say that if you have schizoaffective bipolar type, it's automatically type 1. But hear me out. Yeah, I have mania, and in psychosis, that mania is pretty extreme. But my depression has always been worse. Way, 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 way worse. And before I ever had psychosis, I only had hypomanic episodes. I never had full-blown mania. So yeah, when you take mania and you add psychosis, obviously it's going to look like the really severe mania you'd find in bipolar 1. But I think maybe people could have bipolar 2 and schizoaffective because the psychotic depression is more frequent, it is more long-lasting, it is more severe, and even the manic episodes in psychosis are nothing compared to the depression. Like the mania and psychosis is super fun and super exciting and super gleeful, and I'm, seeing rainbows and shit. But I don't know. I think I'm bipolar too. Like if I didn't have psychosis, I'm pretty sure I'd be bipolar too. So that's just my little nugget of wisdom that I'm gonna throw out there. That being said, my mania outside of psychosis is frustrating because I feel embarrassed that I can't contain the energy that's just spilling out of me. But such a silly thing to say, I kind of enjoy being productive. I do like that. And I know this is a problem with a lot of people with bipolar, especially people who don't have like really, really, really severe mania, is that they like being manic. And it's for the same reason, like they like being productive, they like that they don't have to sleep, they like how it makes them feel. And for this reason, a lot of people don't take their bipolar medication, which actually I have dated a guy who was like this, and he loved being manic, so he wouldn't take his bipolar meds, but then he'd have depressive episodes, and that would be the only time he did take his bipolar meds. But because he didn't take them consistently, it just was this cycle. And I don't like the feeling of being manic, but I like making crafts and I like playing music. And so for that reason, I hate to say it is something that, like, after the episode passed, I'm like, phew, at least I finally deep cleaned my house. Like there are some benefits in the sense that I can get shit done. I wouldn't say there's really any other benefits of mania. I really, really don't like how it makes me feel. It makes me feel very on edge. It makes me feel very agitated. In psychosis, it can make me feel very euphoric, but that's more like, it's more like an ecstasy kind of trippy feeling in psychosis. Outside of psychosis, I feel like get it together, like I'm racing, and I don't like that. In psychosis, it actually makes for some like really wild experiences because I would have very, very, very creative delusions because Mania can make a person feel really creative. It can make them more driven to create, or inspire them, or broaden their imagination. Like mania just kind of like, it just gets in your head in this way that gets the gears going and gets you thinking in angles you haven't thought before. So you come up with new ideas and they all seem brilliant because you have that grandiose personality where you think everything is great and that you're so great, and you can do anything. So in psychosis, I would have like delusions that, for instance, I could play any musical instrument that I touched. And I didn't need to touch the instrument to know, I just knew. And I just so happened to have an ocarina, and I magically somehow played the Mario theme on my ocarina and was like, this proves it. I'm a musical genius. And I didn't really try any other instruments. That was good enough for me. I would draw a lot, like so much, and they'd be pretty trippy drawings, like influenced by the visuals I was having, because some of my hallucinations would be like brighter colors and like kind of like pixelated holographic imagery. And so in psychosis, that's why I say that it's kind of like trippy. It's kind of like an acid trip or something. The mania I had in psychosis was kind of the experience I might have in the imagination of a 5-year-old on a playground. It's like really colorful, it's really loud and bright, and it's very exciting. But depression for me, as I said, is much, much worse. I don't even think my mania in psychosis is all that grand, because the depression is most of the time, or maybe not most of the time, but definitely more than the mania. My psychotic episodes can like kind of lead with mania, and then spots of depression here, maybe long, like a week or more, spells of depression, and of course the periods that are just psychosis. But the depression for me, you know, I was actually just describing to a coworker earlier today some of the dreams that I have. And I don't know if I'd say mostly, but I have pretty frequent nightmares. And they're so ordinary to me because a lot of them are recurring dreams that happen like over and over again, or different, like the same theme in different dreams. And he was like, what the hell is wrong with your dreams? Like, he was kind of blown away. I'd only really told him like 2 of my nightmares, but he was like, dude, because in psychotic depression, it is a living nightmare, and those nightmares still live with me. As a horror movie lover, I, really ruined my mind with gore. And so my psychotic depression really, really reflected that. Every insecurity I had came out onto the table. Any darkness within me, my shadow self, as some would say, all came out. And I just had to look it right in the face. I had a friend after psychosis tell me that I'm really in tune with my shadow self. And I was like, well, yeah, I couldn't do anything but look at it. Like I had no choice. Like the only way to, survive it was to be engulfed in it. And so it's like very, very dark. It honestly, some of the things that I've talked about on my channel, there's a lot of trigger warnings in my videos, talked about a lot of dark stuff, but some of the things that I would like to maybe touch on, you can't even say the subject in a trigger warning. Like, it's that triggering. Like, it's that bad. Like, I have a delusion about black socks, and I've talked quite a few times about my fear of black socks. And I've never actually been able to say why I'm afraid of black socks, because it's that bad. And so, I don't know, I think the psychotic depression has to be the worst experience of my life. College really sucked, got bullied like crazy, high school, like my childhood, like all of that stuff led to me having CPTSD. But even if you took the first 23 years of my life and all of the childhood trauma that developed into CPTSD, it still would pale in comparison to like a month of psychotic depression. it was super hard to come back from. And my depression alone, I would say, is just as bad, but it's, as I said, it's like pure depression. Psychotic depression has dark themes, but that doesn't necessarily mean I feel like, oh, I want to like myself, you know. It means that the depression in me manifests in scary, violent delusions and hallucinations. So it's like a manifestation of the depression. Like all of the elements of my psychosis are reflections of depression. And the depression alone, well, boy, howdy, I know exactly what I'm depressed about, me. And so my depression has been the first symptom of mental illness I have ever had in my life. I have had depression ever since I was about 4 years old. And, you know, I have so many memories of people asking me, like, what's wrong? Why are you so sad? You look so sad. All the way back until kindergarten, I was held back for crying incessantly. And, you know, they said I was emotionally mature. I was cripplingly depressed. And so depression has been something that has weighed down on me for a very, very long time. Still intermittently have depression, but not like before. And my depression was so severe that it almost took my life. And fortunately, I did survive that event, but I was pretty upset about it for about 10 years. For 10 years after my near successful suicide attempt, I was pretty pissed that I lived. And I was mad at myself for not doing it right, honestly, because, you know, when you live with the kind of depression that makes you want to take your own life, you can be mad at yourself for anything, and surviving that can be enough reason for me to hate myself for the next 10 years. Plus, a lot of terrible things happened after that, but, you know, I used to think that I would be doing my family a favor if I left, because I was such a burden on them, and that there were people more deserving of breathing the air on earth than me. I thought, why should I feel so terrible when there are people who actually deserve to feel bad, like people who have real problems. And it didn't occur to me that depression alone was enough of a problem that deserved help. Also, mental health was super stigmatized in my hometown, and getting access to mental health was hard. And even after some did become available, it was still something I couldn't bring up with my family. Every time I asked for help, they would tell me I was looking for attention. So the depression was like a lifelong thing. You know, it wasn't the case that I started having manic and depressive episodes in adolescence. I was depressed all the way up until my first hypomanic episode in high school, and the psychosis came a couple years after that, and it's been off to the races ever since. So in psychosis, yes, the moods can be really heightened, and mostly I would say it's not a reflection of how you feel, like in the sense I feel happy, I feel sad. It's a reflection of the mood, and your mood doesn't necessarily have to be how you feel. For instance, a lot of times when I feel very depressed, I can act really happy and bubbly and ecstatic, and that might be, you know, I feel happy for that moment, but there's this underlying depression that's still there. And so the mood that carries with you, the mood that can persist for months at a time, that can come out as hallucinations and delusions. That can come out as thinking you're a musical genius because you have a grandiose, you know, perception of yourself, like you have an inflated sense of self. Or it can be being afraid of black socks because of an event that happened that is too dark to speak of on YouTube. So yeah, outside of the psychosis, the moods are pure. They're understandable. You can understand why maybe a person might act or think that way. Like maybe in a manic episode, you might not understand why I'm doing cartwheels in the parking lot over and over again until I have like road rash on my hands. But if you were to understand mania enough to realize that that is part of releasing the energy that just will not go away, you might see, yeah, that checks out. So I guess that's what I would say those moods are like in and out of psychosis. And I don't know, I'm grateful that I got out of that last episode. That was really rough. But really, I don't think there's anything more for me to say. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching my video. I truly appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you have mood swings yourself, whether they be from bipolar, major depression, any other disorder, maybe like BPD if you have borderline, what your mood states are like for you, how you cope and get through those. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell for future notifications to my videos. I put out videos every Thursday/Friday, and I have my psychosis researcher interviews and book club videos coming out now. There's also ads for my merch running below the video where you can find my shop and see all the cool art that I've made. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So if you'd like to see more of my videos, there's plenty more coming soon, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Bye. So close your eyes.